Fire her. Fire that black Maid immediately. Harrison's hands were shaking as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. Today, he was about to face the biggest meeting of his career, and everything had to go perfectly. The Wellington Palace Hotel, a symbol of luxury and prestige, was about to host one of the most powerful men in the world, Mr. Jiang, a Chinese billionaire whose investment group controlled billions of dollars in hospitality assets. If the meeting went well, the Wellington would be added to his vast portfolio, marking a turning point for Harrison's career. The stakes were sky high, and Harrison had spent the entire morning double-checking every detail. The hotel staff was ready. The presidential suite was set to precisely 72 degrees. The finest Chinese delicacies were being prepared by the head chef, and the concierge had secured VIP access to the city's most exclusive venues. Everything was lined up perfectly. Harrison stood in the lobby, watching the clock tick closer to 2 p.m. He adjusted his tie again, making sure every detail about his appearance was impeccable. His gaze darted toward the door as the sleek black Mercedes SUVs pulled up the hotel entrance. A wave of nervous energy coursed through him. This was it. Mr. Jiang arrives at precisely 2 p.m. Harrison had briefed his team earlier. His investment group controls over 30 luxury properties worldwide, and he's considering adding the Wellington to his portfolio. This could mean international expansion for all of us. Harrison wasn't just thinking about the hotel's future. His own promotion was on the line. If he could secure this deal, he was sure to be promoted to corporate office. The thought made him adjust his tie one last time. It was the moment he'd been waiting for. The entourage finally entered, and Harrison straightened up, his posture stiff with expectation. The wealthy businessman stepped through the grand entrance of the Wellington with the kind of confidence that could only come from someone used to having the world at their feet. 6 impeccably dressed associates flanked him, each one holding leather portfolios. Harrison smiled and extended his hand, preparing himself to impress. But as soon as Mr. Jiang opened his mouth, everything froze. "And how?" Mr. Jiang began, and then launched into a rapid-fire stream of Mandarin. Harrison's smile faltered. His stomach dropped. This wasn't part of the plan. He had been told that Mr. Jiang spoke perfect English, but it was clear now that this wasn't true. The man's tone was serious, and his gaze was sharp, making it clear that he wasn't pleased with the lack of communication. Harrison scrambled for his phone, fingers trembling as he unlocked the translation app. He held it up and spoke quickly into it, praying that it would work. "Welcome to the Wellington," he said, hoping the app would do its magic. But as the robotic voice translated his greeting, it butchered the pronunciation so badly that Mr. Jiang visibly winced. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Jiang," Harrison said, his voice quivering. "I'm afraid none of our staff speak Mandarin." The words seemed to hang in the air, the weight of them heavier than the grand chandelier above. The room grew suddenly quiet, the tension thick. Harrison glanced nervously at Mr. Jiang's entourage, who exchanged knowing looks. His heart raced, and he could feel his professional reputation crumbling before his eyes. Mr. Jiang was a billionaire, and this misstep could cost the Wellington its future. As Harrison struggled to regain his composure, a figure moved quietly through the lobby behind him. It was Olivia, a member of the housekeeping staff, pushing her cart as she did every day. She glanced at the scene unfolding before her, her eyes meeting Mr. Jiang's for a brief moment. Without a word, she quickly looked away, continuing her task as if nothing were amiss. But Olivia wasn't just another maid. She wasn't invisible, though Harrison had never truly seen her. She had a Harvard degree and a master's in Mandarin from Beijing University, degrees that hung in a small frame in her apartment, tucked away from the world's gaze. She was fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and Japanese. The same woman who cleaned rooms and kept the hotel in pristine condition had skills far beyond her job description. No one knew it, least of all Harrison. But that was about to change. As Harrison fumbled with the translation app, his nerves mounting, Olivia couldn't help but overhear the ongoing conversation. The tension in the lobby was unbearable. Mr. Jiang was clearly frustrated, and Harrison was on the brink of losing everything. The truth was, Olivia had always felt invisible at the Wellington. She had worked there for years, quietly doing her job, unnoticed by the higher-ups who walked by without a second glance. Her fluency in Mandarin had never been a factor in her employment, and her education had been kept in the shadows. She had learned long ago that the hotel's management didn't value people like her, not unless they were in the right department with the right title. But this time, she couldn't ignore it. The opportunity was in front of her. The hotel's future was at risk, and she had the power to change everything. She stood there, her hand resting on her cleaning cart, watching the scene unfold. She could feel the pressure building. She had spent years in the background, waiting for a chance to prove herself. And now, the moment was here. Without thinking, Olivia took a deep breath. She stepped forward, her heart pounding as she approached the group. "Mr. Jang," she said, her voice calm but confident. Speaking in perfect Mandarin, the room froze as everyone turned to look at her. Harrison's eyes widened in disbelief. "I couldn't help but overhear your concerns regarding the hotel's services," Olivia continued, addressing Mr. Jang directly. "Perhaps I can assist with translation." There was a brief moment of silence, and then Mr. Jang, still surprised, responded in rapid Mandarin. He was testing her, speaking quickly and using technical business terms to see if she could keep up. Olivia didn't hesitate. She spoke fluently, explaining the hotel's offerings, addressing concerns, and answering questions as if she had been part of the meeting all along. Her precise understanding of business language, combined with her Mandarin proficiency, stunned everyone in the room, including Harrison. For the first time, Harrison realized the magnitude of what had just happened. He had no idea that someone in his own hotel had the skills to save the day, someone he had never even noticed. But as Olivia continued, smoothly navigating the conversation and bringing clarity to Mr. Jang's questions, Harrison knew one thing for sure. The future of the Wellington had just shifted, and so had his own career. The room was still. A thick silence hung in the air as every eye in the lobby turned to Olivia, the housekeeping staff member who had just stepped in and taken control of a situation that no one else could. Harrison stood frozen, his hand still clutching his smartphone, now utterly useless. His mouth was dry as he struggled to comprehend what had just unfolded. Olivia, the woman who had been invisible in this hotel for so long, was now the one leading the conversation with Mr. Jang. She didn't just speak Mandarin. She spoke it with the precision of someone who had lived and breathed the language, someone who understood not just the words, but the context, the culture. She was an expert, and for the first time, the hotel's general manager was acutely aware of how little he knew. Mr. Jang listened intently, his cold expression beginning to soften. Olivia's words flowed effortlessly, addressing his concerns about the hotel's capabilities in China, explaining the business nuances with fluency that no translation app or poorly briefed employee could match. It wasn't just about the words anymore. It was about understanding the depth of his questions, and Olivia had that understanding. She had spent years in Beijing, working on international relations, learning the complexities of Chinese business culture, knowledge no one in this room had anticipated. Harrison could feel his world shifting. For a moment, he was a spectator in his own hotel, watching someone else step in and do what he couldn't. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. The crisp suit he wore, the polished appearance, the carefully planned presentation, none of it mattered anymore. The true asset, the one who could save the deal, was standing right there in front of him. Olivia, the maid. And then it happened. Mr. Jang smiled. A slow, genuine smile, one that lit up his entire face. Harrison's heart skipped a beat. "You understand the nuances that most Western businesses miss," Mr. Jang said, in Mandarin. "This is rare." Harrison stood motionless, still processing the turn of events. Mr. Jang wasn't just complimenting Olivia. He was acknowledging her value, something Harrison had never done, never even thought to do. The irony was palpable. Harrison, who had spent his entire career climbing the hotel ladder, was now standing in the shadow of a housekeeper. Olivia didn't notice Harrison's discomfort. She was fully engaged with Mr. Jang, translating his questions, answering them with ease, diving deep into topics that Harrison didn't even know existed. She addressed everything: market trends, zoning regulations, and specifics of how Chinese tourists would respond to the hotel's amenities. The information she provided was so on point that Mr. Jang's associates were scribbling notes furiously. Meanwhile, Harrison was still holding his phone, pretending to be part of the conversation, but every word Olivia spoke made him feel smaller. She wasn't just translating for him. She was handling the entire meeting. She was the expert in the room, and it was clear that Mr. Jiang knew it. Harrison's confidence was quickly evaporating. He had prepared for this meeting for months, running through every scenario in his head, thinking about every possible question Mr. Jiang might ask. But Olivia, she had just walked in and delivered everything with ease. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mr. Jiang turned to Harrison, his face serious now. "You run a fine hotel," he said, his voice steady but direct. "But I see a fundamental flaw. You have employees with extraordinary potential, yet they are hidden behind uniforms and job titles." Harrison's heart sank. It was as if Mr. Jiang had just delivered the harshest criticism Harrison could imagine, yet it was delivered with such calm precision that he couldn't even respond. Olivia glanced at Harrison briefly, her eyes neutral, but there was a knowing look in them. She knew what had just happened. She had just been recognized for what she was, a person with immense value, someone who could bridge worlds, not just clean rooms. But instead of gloating, she turned her attention back to Mr. Jiang, completely focused. "Mr. Jiang," she said, "if you're willing to invest in the Wellington, I believe there's a great deal of untapped potential within the staff here. You can't just look at the surface. The real talent lies beneath." Her words were cutting, but they weren't out of place. She wasn't trying to attack Harrison. Instead, she was offering a solution. She was offering a way forward, a way to bring the hotel into a new age, one that recognized the hidden potential in its employees, regardless of their job titles. She didn't just want to save the hotel. She wanted to change it. Mr. Jiang nodded thoughtfully, considering her words. His associates looked at each other, clearly impressed. They had come here to negotiate an investment, but now they were witnessing something much more powerful. Change in real time. Harrison's mind raced. How could he fix this? How could he salvage the situation? But Olivia wasn't waiting for him to come up with an answer. She had already taken charge. She wasn't just a translator anymore. She was driving the conversation. And to her surprise, Mr. Jiang turned to her, asking for her opinion on a specific project in China, one that involved the integration of hospitality and retail spaces. In fluent Mandarin, Olivia began to explain the challenges and opportunities, using examples from her research and education to back up her points. The conversation had shifted. What had started as a potential disaster was now an intelligent, productive discussion. Olivia was offering more than just solutions. She was offering insight, and that made all the difference. Harrison could barely keep up with the flow of the conversation. Every time he thought he understood the topic, Olivia would dive deeper, her words resonating with authority and knowledge. She was no longer just a maid. She was an equal in this high-stakes negotiation, and everyone in the room could see it. As the meeting continued, Harrison's mind was racing. He had been so focused on his own success, his own career trajectory, that he had never once thought to look closely at the people around him. He had underestimated Olivia, just as he had underestimated many others in his life. But now, in front of Mr. Jiang, he was witnessing a transformation he never saw coming. At the end of the meeting, when Mr. Jiang finally stood up to leave, he turned to Harrison and said, "I will be recommending the Wellington to my associates, but I suggest you take a long, hard look at your staff. If you can recognize the potential in your people, you will go far." Olivia's quiet, confident smile was the only thing Harrison could focus on. He had been given a second chance, but not because of his own efforts. No, it was Olivia who had saved the day, and in doing so, she had opened Harrison's eyes to what had been right in front of him all along. As the team left the room, Olivia glanced at Harrison, her expression unreadable, but there was a glimmer in her eyes. Something new. She had been seen, and for the first time in years, she wasn't invisible anymore. The following days felt like a blur for Harrison. After Mr. Jiang's visit, the weight of his failure and Olivia's unexpected triumph lingered heavily over him. The Wellington Palace Hotel had dodged disaster, yes, but at what cost? Harrison had always prided himself on his ability to control the narrative to lead his team to success. Now, he was left wondering how it had all slipped through his fingers. It wasn't just that the deal with Mr. Jiang had been saved. It was the fact that it had been Olivia, of all people, who had done it. The realization gnawed at him. He had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, meticulously planning every step, making sure that everything, down to the smallest detail, was under control. And yet, the one thing he hadn't planned for was the person who would come from the shadows and turn everything upside down. Olivia had stepped into the role that no one had even thought to offer her, and with one conversation, she had rewritten the rules. Harrison, the man with decades of experience in the hospitality industry, had been outclassed by a housekeeper. It stung, and yet it also sparked something within him. But that wasn't all. What had begun as a single, pivotal moment was quickly turning into a much bigger question, one Harrison couldn't ignore. How many other Olivias were out there? Hidden in plain sight, their talents locked away because of titles, assumptions, and a system that refused to see them for who they truly were? A shift in perspective. Olivia's newfound visibility didn't go unnoticed. The following days were filled with whispers throughout the hotel. Employees from every department were talking, exchanging looks, and speculating about the woman who had so effortlessly changed the course of the Wellington's future. For years, Olivia had been just another housekeeper in the hotel, invisible to the upper management. But now, she was something entirely different. She was an expert, someone whose knowledge was worth more than a polished suit or a VIP guest list. She was living proof that the Wellington success didn't just depend on luxury amenities or perfectly curated experiences. It depended on recognizing the untapped potential within the people who made the hotel run, the ones who worked behind the scenes and made it all possible. As Harrison walked through the lobby, he caught a glimpse of Olivia speaking to the concierge. Her Mandarin was smooth and confident as she assisted in translating for a group of Chinese guests. She was no longer just performing her duties. She was interacting with guests as a knowledgeable, professional asset. Harrison stood at the entrance, watching her. The difference was undeniable. She wasn't just cleaning rooms anymore. She was shaping the experience. For the first time, Harrison saw her not as an employee with a uniform, but as a crucial part of the hotel's operation. His mind raced. How many other employees had he failed to recognize for their full potential? How many others were waiting for their moment to shine, just like Olivia had? The realization hit him like a wave. His whole approach to leadership had been wrong. He had been so focused on maintaining control, on projecting authority, that he had overlooked the very people who could elevate the hotel to new heights. But Harrison wasn't the only one who noticed a shift. Olivia was now drawing attention from higher-ups, people who had previously paid little attention to the housekeeping staff. The next morning, the regional director paid a surprise visit to the Wellington. As he made his rounds, his eyes lingered on Olivia, who was greeting the Chinese guests with the kind of warmth and professionalism that made them feel immediately at home. The regional director smiled to himself. Harrison had been struggling to impress him for months. But now, Olivia's effortless blend of hospitality knowledge and cultural fluency was what the hotel needed. She was the key to cracking the international market Harrison had been chasing for so long. "Is she part of your team?" the regional director asked, his tone casual but with an edge of curiosity. Harrison hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "She's housekeeping. She's been with us for years." The regional director's eyes flicked to Olivia, then back to Harrison. "I see. Well, maybe it's time to rethink our strategy." The offer. It wasn't long before Olivia was called into Harrison's office. Her heart raced as she entered, uncertain of what to expect. She had never been invited to the executive offices before. She had always remained in the background, just another member of the housekeeping team. But now, the very person who had ignored her for so long was asking for her attention. Harrison was sitting behind his desk, his fingers tapping nervously on the surface. His expression was unreadable. When Olivia entered, he stood and gestured toward the chair across from him. "Please sit," he said, his voice different, softer, almost apologetic. Olivia took a seat, her eyes scanning the room. It was a stark contrast to the employee break room she was used to. The walls were adorned with framed pictures of the hotel's most successful events. Everything about the space screamed professionalism, something she had never felt she belonged to until now. "I owe you an apology," Harrison said, breaking the silence. Olivia looked up in surprise. "I didn't recognize your value. And for that, I'm sorry. You've proven to me that the Wellington is not just about luxury. It's about people. And I've been blind to the potential we have here." Olivia remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I've spoken to the regional director," Harrison said. "He's impressed with your language skills, your cultural knowledge, and your ability to connect with guests. We've been discussing a new position for you, Director of International Relations." The words hit Olivia like a lightning bolt. She had never imagined a role like that would be offered to her, let alone by Harrison, the same man who had ordered her to be fired just days earlier. Her heart raced, but she remained composed. "You want me to move up? To leave housekeeping behind?" she asked cautiously, still trying to process everything. Harrison nodded. "You've shown that you're capable of so much more. You've earned this, Olivia. I don't want to lose you to another company. This hotel needs someone who can understand and bridge the cultural gap for our international guests, and I believe you're the right person for the job." Olivia paused, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. She had dreamed of working in international business, of using her education to create real change. But could she truly leave behind the world she had known for so long? "You've worked here for years," Harrison continued, his voice sincere. "You've seen the hotel in a way none of us have. I believe you can help us adapt to this new, global market. The role is yours if you want it." For the first time in years, Olivia felt seen. She wasn't just a woman who pushed a cart through the hallways. She was someone with a voice, with value. The decision was hers now. After a long pause, Olivia looked Harrison in the eye, her voice steady. "I'll take the position. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for everyone like me who's been overlooked." Harrison nodded, a look of understanding passing between them. Olivia had just changed the game, and she wasn't finished yet. The following days felt like a whirlwind for Olivia. Her new position as Director of International Relations was surreal, a role she had never imagined possible. She had spent years quietly going about her work, blending into background, but now, for the first time, she was stepping into the spotlight. As she walked through the halls of the Wellington Palace Hotel, she noticed how differently people looked at her now. The casual glances of the staff had shifted into looks of curiosity and respect. Even the executives, who once never spared her a second thought, now gave her the kind of acknowledgement that only came when someone had earned their place at the table. But while others marveled at her new position, Olivia's mind was consumed with the work ahead. She knew this opportunity was a double-edged sword. If she succeeded, she would change the way the Wellington did business. But if she failed, it would be a harsh reminder of how easy it was for someone like her to be overlooked again. There was no room for error. She needed to prove herself, not just to Harrison or Mr. Jang, but to the entire hotel. They had seen her rise, but now she had to show them why it was worth watching her climb. Her first meeting with Harrison was more awkward than she expected. He sat across from her, eyes scanning her face, still processing the fact that the very woman he had once tried to fire had not only saved the Wellington, but now held the key to its future. "I want you to take charge of everything related to international guests," he said, though there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. "We're expanding. I need someone who understands the market, someone who can make our international guests feel truly welcomed." Olivia nodded, her mind already working, formulating ideas that had been bubbling beneath the surface for years. She wasn't just going to bridge the gap between cultures. She was going to tear it down, starting with the way the hotel treated its guests and, more importantly, its staff. She knew that cultural nuances went beyond language. They touched every aspect of hospitality, from the way a room was prepared to how guests were greeted at the door. The Wellington had its luxury amenities, but it lacked one thing that was essential to global business: true understanding. Her first major challenge came just days after she took her new position. A high-profile group of Chinese businessmen were due to arrive, and it was her responsibility to ensure their experience at the Wellington was flawless. She gathered the team in the conference room, Watching as the department heads filed in, the room felt different now. The same people who had once seen her as just housekeeping were now looking to her for guidance. She laid out her vision for them. We need to think beyond the surface. It's not enough to serve luxury. We need to serve in a way that aligns with cultural expectations. Chinese guests, for example, value privacy above all else. We need to ensure their rooms reflect that. No unnecessary personal interaction unless requested. And we need to integrate their cultural preferences into everything we offer, from the food to the decor. The room was quiet as the staff absorbed her words. This was uncharted territory for most of them. The hotel had always prided itself on offering excellent service, but Olivia was showing them that the definition of excellence was broader than they had ever imagined. Days before the group of businessmen was due to arrive, Olivia toured the hotel, making notes on what needed to be adjusted. She met with the head chef to discuss authentic Chinese dishes that would cater to the guests' tastes, not just generic international options. She spoke with the concierge team about arranging excursions that respected cultural preferences, ensuring that their luxury experience felt authentic, not just extravagant. As she walked through the lobby, Olivia couldn't help but notice the small, but glaring, details that had been overlooked, like the lack of tea service areas, which were essential for many of the hotel's international guests, especially from China. In a quiet moment, Harrison caught up with her. He had been watching the changes with a mixture of awe and wariness. "Olivia, what you're doing is incredible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I need to know, do you think this is going to work? I mean, these changes are big." Olivia paused, her gaze steady. "It's not about making changes for the sake of change, Harrison. It's about adapting to the world that's already here. The Wellington has always been about luxury. But luxury isn't just about gold chandeliers and five-star amenities. It's about understanding people, their backgrounds, and making them feel at home. We can't just cater to Western standards anymore. We have to be global. If we don't change now, we risk being left behind." Harrison listened, the weight of her words settling in. He had always prided himself on being a meticulous planner. But Olivia was showing him that success didn't just lie in what was planned. It was in the details that went unnoticed, the ones that spoke volumes to the people who truly mattered. The day of the Chinese businessman's arrival, the hotel was running like a well-oiled machine. Olivia had made sure every detail was perfect. As the group entered the lobby, the concierge greeted them in Mandarin. Their rooms were prepared with the utmost privacy in mind, and the food served was authentically Chinese, tailored to their specific tastes. For the first time, Olivia felt like the hotel had come alive with a new energy, a harmony between the staff and the guests that had been missing before. The businessmen were impressed, not just with the luxury of the hotel, but with the attention to detail, the understanding of their culture, and the seamless experience that had been created for them. As the evening came to a close, one of the businessmen turned to Olivia. "I've traveled the world," he said, smiling. "But this is the first time I felt truly respected as a guest. Your team didn't just meet our expectations. They exceeded them." Olivia smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. It was more than just a success of the day. It was a validation of everything she had worked for. She wasn't just a housekeeper anymore. She was a catalyst for change, the person who had helped the Wellington Palace Hotel see its true potential. As the night came to an end, Harrison approached Olivia again, this time without the usual walls he had put up. "I think I'm starting to understand now," he said, his voice sincere. "I've been so focused on the luxury, the brand, the image of the hotel. But you've shown me that the true luxury is in the people." Olivia nodded, her gaze steady and sure. "The hotel is made up of the people who work here, Harrison. And the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can start building a real future." The change was undeniable. Olivia had just begun her work, but already she had begun reshaping the Wellington Palace Hotel in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't just about luxury anymore. It was about people, employees, guests, and everyone in between, finally being seen for who they truly were. And for Olivia, that was just the beginning. The shift at the Wellington was more profound than Olivia had expected. In just a few weeks, her role as Director of International Relations had started to reshape the hotel's very foundation. What had once been a high-end luxury hotel for the wealthy elite was now transforming into something much more dynamic, a place where diverse cultures were not just accommodated but celebrated. Olivia was slowly but surely rewriting the rules, and the results were undeniable. But not everyone was thrilled about the changes. As she walked through the lobby one morning, her eyes scanned the scene. The hotel had never felt so alive. Guests from all over the world now roamed the halls, speaking a variety of languages, exchanging smiles with the staff, and engaging with the hotel's offerings in a way they hadn't before. The concierge desk, which had once been a quiet afterthought, now buzzed with activity as employees worked seamlessly together to help international guests feel truly at home. The executive team had taken notice of the shift in the hotel's energy, but some, particularly the longtime staff, weren't so sure. At lunch one day, Olivia sat with the head of housekeeping, Emma, and the head of concierge, Ryan. There was a subtle tension in the air. Olivia could tell they were adjusting to the changes, but it wasn't easy for everyone to accept that the old ways were no longer enough. "I just want to make sure we're still delivering the service that we've always been known for," Emma said, her voice slightly defensive. "Luxury doesn't change, Olivia. It's what brought the wealthiest clients to this hotel in the first place." Olivia nodded, choosing her words carefully. She understood Emma's concern. The idea that luxury was synonymous with opulence and Western standards was something deeply ingrained in many of the staff. But Olivia was determined to show them that true luxury wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about creating an experience that spoke to the heart. "Emma, I'm not saying we throw everything we built out the window," Olivia replied. "I'm saying we need to expand our understanding of what luxury means. For example, we need to acknowledge that not all our international guests value luxury in the same way. Some prefer privacy and understated elegance. Others might prioritize family-friendly accommodations or culturally specific amenities. It's about making them feel seen, understood, and respected. That's the luxury they're after." Ryan, who had been silent for most of the conversation, leaned in, his brow furrowed. "But how do we even begin to do that? It's not like we can just change our entire service model overnight." Olivia took a deep breath, the weight of their skepticism not lost on her. "We've already started. It's in the small things, the little touches that make a world of difference. Remember how we changed the way we approach our Chinese guests? We created a dedicated tea service area. We made sure that the rooms had the right balance of privacy and comfort. We did that in just a few days. Now, we need to expand that thinking to other groups. It's about paying attention to the needs of our guests. Every guest, not just the ones who fit the Western mold." The conversation lingered, but Olivia could tell something had shifted. The resistance was still there, but it was softening. Emma, Ryan, and others were starting to see that the future of the Wellington didn't lie in clinging to outdated traditions. The hotel needed to evolve, and that evolution had to be built on inclusivity, respect, and a deep understanding of diverse cultures. She wasn't asking them to abandon the foundations of luxury that the hotel had been built on. She was simply showing them that true luxury meant embracing the complexities of the world around them. As the weeks passed, Olivia's influence began to spread. It wasn't just the staff who were starting to change. The hotel's entire strategy was shifting. Harrison, once a symbol of rigid control and meticulous planning, had slowly begun to embrace her vision. He'd noticed a difference in the hotel's business outcomes. More international clients were booking, and repeat guests from different parts of the world were commenting on how much more personalized their stays had become. What had once felt like an impossible task, transforming a traditional luxury hotel into a truly global destination, was becoming a reality, and Olivia was at the center of it all. But with this success came a deeper challenge. Her position in the hotel was no longer just a role. It was a responsibility that would determine the future of the Wellington. Harrison had always been the one at the top, but Olivia was now the one with the vision. She knew it wouldn't be long before the executive team started to question where her true place in the hierarchy was. Was she just a figurehead to lead the international strategy, or was she becoming something more? One day, Harrison called Olivia into his office again. This time, his tone was different, less formal, more direct. He looked at her with a mixture of respect and apprehension, like he was about to make a decision that would change everything. "I need to ask you something," he began. The board has been talking about your role here. They've noticed the impact you're having on the hotel, and they're asking if you're ready for something bigger. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She had always imagined that this day would come, but the reality of it hit her like a tidal wave. "What do you mean by something bigger?" she asked, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "They're talking about a senior leadership position, maybe even overseeing global operations. You've proven that you have the vision, and the board thinks you're capable of taking us to the next level." He paused, as if gauging her reaction. "But I need to know, do you think you're ready for that? Are you ready to take the lead on an even bigger scale?" Olivia didn't answer immediately. The weight of the question settled over her like a heavy cloak. She had always dreamed of this kind of opportunity, but now that it was in front of her, she couldn't ignore the pressure. She had started this journey to prove herself, to change the course of her life and the future of the Wellington. But now, the stakes were even higher. If she accepted this new responsibility, there would be no turning back. It wasn't just about the hotel anymore. It was about her legacy. "I'm ready," Olivia finally said, her voice calm but resolute. "I know the vision we need. I'm not just here to be a figurehead. I want to build a future where the Wellington leads the way in global hospitality, not just in luxury, but in understanding. And I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make that happen." Harrison's eyes softened. "I knew you would say that. The board is going to be thrilled." As Olivia left his office, a new sense of purpose filled her. She wasn't just a director of international relations anymore. She was the architect of the future of the Wellington Palace Hotel. And this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed Olivia's promotion were a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and challenges. No longer just a director of international relations, she now had the power to shape the future of the Wellington Palace Hotel on a global scale. The senior leadership position had brought new expectations, but with it, a sense of responsibility that weighed heavily on her shoulders. She wasn't just working to prove herself anymore. She was working to change the culture of a historic hotel and to make it a symbol of global hospitality. Harrison, though supportive of her rise, was still adjusting to his own place in this new structure. He had spent years at the helm, thinking of the hotel as his personal domain, and now, Olivia's bold new vision was steering in directions he hadn't anticipated. He had handed her the reins, but now, as the days passed, he started to wonder if he had made the right choice. Olivia was taking risks, pushing boundaries, and challenging the traditional mindset of the hotel's senior executives. And as much as he respected her, Harrison couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the future he had built was slipping through his fingers. Olivia was keenly aware of the tension. The hotel was transforming, but it was no longer just about guest experiences or international markets. The biggest challenge lay within the walls of the hotel itself. The people who had built their careers on the old way of doing things. The same people who had once looked at her as a mere housekeeper now had to accept that she was leading them, guiding them into unfamiliar territory. The internal resistance was subtle at first, but Olivia could feel it every time she entered a meeting room. Eyes would shift. Conversations would pause. There was no explicit rebellion, but the weight of tradition was undeniable. She was determined, though. The changes she had set in motion weren't just about luxury and cultural understanding. They were about breaking down the walls that kept people from seeing each other as equals. She had spent years being overlooked. Now, she had the power to make sure no one else was ever invisible again. Her first major project was to introduce a system for identifying and developing hidden talent within the hotel staff. She wasn't just going to look at resumes or job titles anymore. She wanted to understand the skills, experiences, and dreams of every employee. She began by quietly meeting with people from all departments. Maintenance staff, waiters, concierges. Olivia spoke with them all, asking questions that went beyond their jobs. What do you love to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? She was amazed at the wealth of untapped potential that had been sitting right in front of her all along. People like Emma, the head of housekeeping, had degrees and skills they had never had a chance to use. And Ryan, the concierge, had spent years as a translator for his family business before he had ever worked at the hotel. Olivia set up a hidden talent initiative, something Harrison had never even considered, where employees could share their skills, interests, and educational backgrounds. She arranged for language classes, business courses, and leadership training, giving the staff the tools they needed to grow within the hotel. For Olivia, this was about creating a new culture, one where people were valued not just for their roles, but for the full extent of their abilities. But as her initiative began to gain traction, the resistance from some corners of the hotel became more vocal. One morning, Emma pulled Olivia aside in the staff kitchen, her face tense. "Olivia, I get what you're trying to do. I really do," she said. "But you're asking a lot. Some people here have worked at the Wellington for 20 years. They've always done their job a certain way. Now you're telling them they need to change. They're not ready for that. They're afraid." Olivia listened carefully, understanding the underlying fear that was driving the resistance. Change was never easy, especially when it threatened everything someone had built their life around. But Olivia knew there was no other way. The Wellington had to evolve if it wanted to stay relevant in a fast-changing world. "Emma, I know it's hard," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But if we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. And I won't let that happen. I'm not asking anyone to change everything. I'm asking them to be seen, really seen, for who they are." The conversation stayed with Olivia long after she left the staff kitchen. The weight of leadership was becoming heavier, and the stakes were higher than ever. Every decision she made now had the potential to change not just her career, but the lives of the people who had entrusted her with their futures. The hotel was no longer just her job. It was her mission. Harrison, watching from the sidelines, began to realize that Olivia wasn't just changing the hotel's operations. She was changing the very culture of the place. He saw how the staff responded to her, how they trusted her to guide them, to give them the opportunities they had long been denied. But he also saw the subtle pushback, how the old guard, the people who had helped build the Wellington into what was, felt threatened. They had built their success on tradition, and Olivia's bold new vision was a direct challenge to that. One night, Harrison found himself in his office, staring out over the city skyline, his mind swirling. Olivia had become something more than a colleague. She had become the future of the Wellington, and he was beginning to question his own place in that future. He had been the one to bring her into the hotel, but now she was leading it in directions he hadn't prepared for. The thought crossed his mind. What if she surpassed him? What if this was no longer his hotel? The next morning, Harrison asked Olivia to meet him in his office. As she sat across from him, he couldn't hide the unease in his expression. "Olivia," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of uncertainty, "I've been watching you, and I have to admit, I'm impressed. But I need to know, are you prepared for what comes next? Because what you're doing, it's not just a shift, it's a revolution." Olivia met his gaze, her confidence unwavering. "I'm prepared, Harrison. I've always known this was bigger than me. This is about the Wellington's future, and I'm not backing down. But it's not just about changing the hotel. It's about changing the way we see people. And that starts with you." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Harrison didn't know how to respond. He had been the leader of the Wellington for so long. But now, he was beginning to realize that leadership was no longer about control. It was about vision. And Olivia had a vision that could take the hotel to places he had never imagined. He nodded slowly, a sense of clarity washing over him. "I've seen the way the staff responds to you, Olivia, and I think you're right. We need to change. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm willing to follow your lead." It was a pivotal moment, one that solidified Olivia's place at the helm of the Wellington Palace Hotel. She wasn't just a figurehead anymore. She was the leader, the driving force behind the hotel's transformation. And with Harrison's support, she was ready to take it further than anyone could have imagined. It had been months since Olivia had taken charge at the Wellington Palace Hotel, and the transformation was undeniable. What had once been a symbol of traditional luxury was now a hotel of the future, a place where diverse cultures were welcomed, where staff were valued not for their roles, but for their full potential. Olivia had changed the hotel's trajectory, and in doing so, she had changed herself. But the weight of leadership was heavier than she had ever imagined, and the challenges were far from over. The day came when Olivia walked into a boardroom filled with executives and the regional director, each one scrutinizing her every move. The board was pleased with the hotel's progress, but there was still one looming question. Could Olivia's vision be sustained? Could the Wellington truly redefine luxury on a global scale? Or was it just a flash in the pan? Harrison sat at the far end of the table, his eyes fixed on Olivia. He had watched her grow into her role, had seen her push boundaries and take risks. Now, he was silently hoping she could prove that the changes she made were more than just temporary adjustments. They had to be permanent. Olivia, the regional director began, his voice measured but clear, you've done impressive work, but we need to know what's next. How do we ensure that the changes you've made will continue long after you're gone? The room went silent, the weight of his words pressing down on Olivia. She knew this moment was coming. The people around the table wanted to be sure that the hotel wasn't just riding on her shoulders, that the changes were embedded in the culture, the very DNA of the Wellington. They needed a plan for the future, one that would outlast her and ensure the success of her vision. For a moment, Olivia didn't speak. She let the silence hang, the pressure mounting. But then she took a deep breath and stood tall, the confidence she had gained over the months now fully within her. She wasn't just talking about what she had done anymore. She was talking about the future she had already set in motion. The changes we made aren't about me, Olivia began, her voice steady and clear. They're about everyone who works here, the ones who were invisible before, the ones whose talents were locked away behind uniforms and job titles. The Wellington isn't just a luxury hotel anymore. It's a place where we see people for who they really are. And that means we don't stop here. We keep looking for the hidden potential in every single person. She paused, letting her words sink in. The next step is simple. We need to build a leadership pipeline within the hotel. It starts with creating an environment where talent isn't just recognized, it's nurtured. We need to make sure that the values we built aren't just talked about in meetings, but practiced every day. The Wellington has always been about luxury, but now it's about something more. It's about respect, inclusivity, and understanding. She turned to Harrison, who had been listening intently. He had never expected this. He had watched Olivia grow, but he hadn't seen this level of depth in her thinking. This isn't just a hotel, she continued, her gaze shifting to the rest of the room. This is a community that values everyone. The next step is for every department to mirror what we've done with the international relations team. We need to create opportunities for everyone to grow, from the maintenance team to the front desk. Everyone has a place here, and everyone can contribute to our success. Harrison felt something shift within him as he listened. Olivia wasn't just a leader who had turned the hotel around. She was shaping a new legacy. She wasn't asking for acknowledgement or validation. She was building something that would last, something that would outlive all of them. It was no longer about impressing the board or securing his own future. It was about the Wellington's future, and Olivia was giving it a vision it had never had before. As the meeting progressed, the mood in the room began to change. The resistance that had once existed, both internally and externally, started to soften. The board members who had been hesitant about Olivia's unconventional methods began to nod, understanding that she wasn't just changing the hotel's business model. She was changing the very culture of the hotel industry itself. They began to see that she wasn't just some rising star. She was someone who had the foresight to build a sustainable, inclusive future. By the end of the meeting, Olivia had secured the support she needed. But it wasn't just the board that was backing her now. It was everyone. She had given them a reason to believe in the future of the Wellington, a future where success wasn't measured by profits alone, but by the lives impacted. In the weeks that followed, the Wellington Palace Hotel continued to thrive. Olivia's Hidden Talent initiative grew into a full-fledged leadership program that took staff members from all departments and helped them realize their potential. People who had spent years in service positions now found themselves stepping into management roles. The hotel was no longer just a place for luxury. It was a place for opportunity. As Olivia watched the transformations unfold, she realized something profound. This wasn't just about the hotel. It was about creating a ripple effect. What had started as one woman's desire to be seen had turned into a movement, one that had the power to change not just the Wellington, but the entire industry. As the sun set over the city skyline, Olivia stood by the window of her office, looking out at the bustling world below. She had done it. She had turned the Wellington Palace Hotel into a symbol of what was possible when people were valued for who they truly were. She had proven that the future of hospitality wasn't just about luxury and service. It was about recognizing humanity in everyone who walked through those doors. For Olivia, it wasn't just about creating change. It was about leaving a legacy, one that would continue to inspire others long after she was gone. And as she looked out over the hotel, she knew that the future was bright, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been invisible.